All right, before we get into this, I want to be clear about something. I'm trying really hard not to do politics. We do trucks, we do consumer advocacy. We follow the money and we follow the facts. We've gone after Ford, we've gone after GM, we've gone after Stellantis, we've gone after the dealerships, we've called it like we see it, regardless of who's in the room. Today we're reporting on a story that directly affects every single person watching this video. What you paid for your truck, what you're allowed to do with it, and who gets to decide. The facts of this story run straight through Washington, D.C., right before the 4th of July weekend. We're going to report those facts exactly as they happened, on the record, with direct quotes, with dates, and names attached. If it sounds like good news for truck owners, that's because it is. Truck owners come in every flavor in this country. Now let's get into it. Oh, and happy 4th of July. Buckle up.
For anyone who's been following this channel, and if you haven't, go find our Ford patent video right now, link in the description. You already know what's been building under the hood of the American automotive industry. The manufacturers have been on a multi-year campaign to lock you out of your vehicle, not with a padlock, with software, with proprietary diagnostic systems, with dealer-only repair mandates buried in their warranty language, with connected car architecture designed from the ground up to make sure the only person who can touch your truck is someone on their payroll. We covered the Ford patent in detail on this channel. Biometric monitoring, iris scanning, lip reading technology built into your own cab, law enforcement database integration, a kill switch mandate written directly into federal infrastructure legislation. This wasn't speculation. It was in the paperwork, filed, approved, and documented. And behind all of it was a simple business model. Make the vehicle so complicated, so connected, so locked down that the working man who paid $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 for his truck has to drive it back to the dealership every time a sensor hiccups. That was the plan. On June 29, 2026, 3 days before the 4th of July, a presidential memorandum landed with the title, Lowering the Cost of Living by Promoting the Freedom to Fix. Now, I'm going to tell you exactly what that means, exactly how it happened, and exactly why you shouldn't pop the champagne bottle just yet. So to understand what happened on June 29th, you have to go back to June 3rd. Because on June 3rd, that's when the CEOs walked in. Not one CEO, 3 of them. Jim Farley, Ford Motor Company, the man whose engineers filed those patents we covered. The man whose company is currently navigating more than its share of recall investigations, to say the least. Mary Barra, General Motors, presiding over the 6.2-liter lifter failure cover-up we documented in detail a few days back. 20 years on that story, by the way. Thousands of truck owners. And then there's the BlackRock of the automotive industry, Roger Penske. If you don't know that name, you've probably bought from his dealership somewhere along the line. Penske Automotive Group is one of the largest dealership operations in America. Hundreds of locations, hundreds of thousands of vehicles sold every year. Penske doesn't build trucks, Penske sells them. And more importantly, especially for this story, Penske fixes them at dealership rates with dealer parts on dealer timelines. That's his entire business model. And right to repair is definitely an existential threat to it. These 3 people, normally market competitors in a cutthroat industry, walked into the Oval Office together. Think about that for a second. Ford and GM, they can't agree on what time it is, let alone if the sky is blue. But they agree on this. That tells you how much money was on this table that day. Now, here's where the story gets kind of interesting. Anyone who has watched how business gets done at the highest level in Washington knows that the current Oval Office has a particular energy. The meetings are informal, conversational. The president is famously hospitable one-on-one. He'll shoot the breeze with damn near anybody. He'll laugh. He'll make you feel heard. And these three CEOs, accustomed to being the smartest people in any room that they walk into, read that hospitality as agreement. So they showed their cards, at least that's my best guess. They lobbied openly, directly, for legislation that would restrict everyday Americans from repairing their own connected vehicles. Their argument was safety, but their motivation was market control. They thought they had the room. They did not have the room. The very next morning, that would be June 4th, the President of the United States walked out to a microphone and said this, and I am going to read this directly because the exact words matter. Quote, "They want a bill that prohibits people from fixing. I grew up. I went to school with some guys. They fixed an engine blindfolded. They could take a car apart blindfolded. And so there's a move on to stop people from fixing their cars. I don't understand it," unquote. He called the request, and I'm quoting, "strange." So three of the most powerful executives in American industry flew to Washington to lobby for protection from the American consumer, and they got called strange on national television the next morning. That's the story. Not the ideology, not the party, the story. Three corporate giants overplayed their hand and got publicly embarrassed by the very meeting they requested. The response from the auto industry was immediate and predictable. Jim Farley, Ford CEO, went to the Detroit Free Press in mid-June to make the case for why the president was wrong. And to his credit, I guess, Farley is smart enough not to say the quiet part out loud again. He didn't say he needs dealer monopoly on repair to protect their revenue stream. He said this. He said that while he personally can fix a 1973 Bronco, I'll believe it when I see it, right? Allowing a private citizen to work on a modern connected vehicle at home would, quote, "put people's lives at risk." So, safety, that's the card he played. Now I want to be fair here, at least for a moment, because this is where the story gets nuanced, and nuance matters. Is there a kernel of legitimate argument buried in what Farley said? Yes, there's a kernel. Somewhere in there. Modern trucks are not 1973 Broncos. They run ADAS systems, advanced driver assistance, torque-by-wire, integrated safety modules that talk to each other in real time. If you mess with the wrong calibration on a modern braking system and you don't know what you're doing, that could be a real problem. That's true, and it's worth acknowledging. But that's about it. But here's the difference between a legitimate safety concern and a safety argument being weaponized for market concerns. A legitimate safety concern targets the specific repair, the specific system, the specific risk. It says, here are the procedures. Here are the certifications. Here is what qualifies you to work on this component. So what Mr. Farley and his ilk have been pushing is not that at all. What they've been pushing is blanket lockouts, proprietary codes that independent shops cannot access, diagnostic systems that only communicate with dealer equipment, and warranty language that voids your coverage the moment a non-dealer hand touches your vehicle. That's not a safety policy. That's a service counter monopoly dressed up in a hard hat. And the president apparently saw right through that BS. So on June 29th, after Farley's public statements, after the lobbying push, after the industry made its case, the memorandum got signed away. Quote, lowering the cost of living by promoting the freedom to fix, unquote. Round one to the working man.
Okay, I want to stop right here for a second because I think it's important to say something clearly. A piece of paper got signed, that matters. The direction it points matters. The public statement that accompanied it matters. But a memorandum is not a law, and a law is not enforcement. And enforcement is not cultural change inside corporations that have billion-dollar legal teams and a century of knowing how to outlast regulatory pressure. So, what does this actually mean for the guy with the 2021 Ram 1500 who just got told his warranty is void because he took it to an independent shop? What does it mean for the mechanic running a 3-bay shop in a town of 12,000 people who can't access manufacturer's diagnostic codes? What does it mean for the right to repair movement that's been fighting this battle state by state, bill by bill, for years? Well, it means the wind shifted. It does not mean the war is over, though. And here's why that matters more than the celebration.
The safety argument doesn't go away because a memorandum got signed, though. It goes underground. It gets repackaged. It gets introduced at the state level where there's less spotlight. It gets embedded in insurance policy language. It gets built into software, updates, agreements that you click through without reading because they're 47 pages long and written in a dialect of English that only exists in legal documents. Here's the principle at stake, and it applies far beyond vehicles. When you allow a corporation or a government agency influenced by that corporation to define what you are qualified to do with your own legally purchased property, you have opened a door that is very difficult to close. We've seen this argument before in a different context, but the structure is identical. The argument is always, you don't know what you're doing. You could hurt yourself. You could hurt someone else. Let the professionals handle it. Let us decide what you're qualified to own and maintain. Once this type of logic is established, once the precedent exists that your competence with your own property is subject to regulatory approval, the question becomes not whether that power gets expanded, but when and just how fast. Today it's diagnostic software, tomorrow it's emissions modifications, next year it's whether your truck qualifies for the road under a new safety standard that conveniently requires a dealer visit to certify. If you think that's paranoia, go back and watch our video on the connected car surveillance patents. That content was in actual filed documents, not speculation, not conspiracy. Paperwork with patent numbers, with diagrams. These companies, they don't telegraph their intentions on social media platforms. They file patents. They write legislation. They lobby in rooms most people never hear about until someone walks out of that room and calls the whole thing strange on a microphone.
So here's where we are on the 4th of July weekend. The corporate boardrooms of Ford, GM, and the largest dealership operation in the country walked into Washington and tried to put a lock on your hood. They got told no, publicly, on the record. The freedom to fix your own vehicle, to take it to the shop of your choosing, to work on it in your own driveway, to have an independent mechanic run a diagnostic without hitting a proprietary wall. That freedom just got an official endorsement from the Oval Office. This is worth acknowledging. This is worth celebrating for exactly one day. And then on the 5th of July, the work continues because the manufacturers didn't give up the pattern portfolio. They didn't roll back the connected car architecture. They didn't open up the diagnostic codes. They didn't change the warranty language. They lost a lobbying round. They will be back with a different angle and a better argument, and most importantly for them, I'm sure, a quieter approach. Your job, our job, is to stay informed, stay loud, support right to repair legislation in your state, support independent shops always, know your rights under the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act, which already says manufacturer cannot void your warranty simply because you used an independent shop for your maintenance. Know that. Use that. The man and his truck and the open road. That's not a commercial. That's a value set. And it's worth defending every time someone in a boardroom decides it's an obstacle to their quarterly earnings. Happy 4th of July, folks. Stay free, stay informed, and I'll see you at the next exit.